I was super skeptical at first. I thought it was complete woo-woo science. It was quickly blown away. The sheer amounts of published peer-reviewed literature. The core thing that's going on is really at the cellular level. Red and near-infrared wavelengths of light boost your immune system into something that's anti-inflammatory. By creating a more porous membrane, those cells actually shrink. So you get this reduction in fat cells. There's also this upregulation in your metabolism as well. By helping our cells function in a normal capacity, they're able to do what our bodies were intended to do.
Welcome to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast, where we meet the world's top experts to explore the secrets of health, mindset, longevity, and so much more. Are you ready to take charge of your existence and biohack your life? This show is for you. Please keep in mind, we're not dispensing medical advice and are not responsible for any outcomes you may experience from implementing the tactics lying herein. Are you ready? Let's do this. Welcome back to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast. Today's podcast is all about one of my personal obsessions, and that is red light and near-infrared therapy. To say I'm obsessed with the benefits of red light and near-infrared therapy might just be the understatement of the year. As we'll discuss in this episode, red light and near-infrared therapy actually changes how your cells generate energy, and it can therefore make the entirety of your body just function better. And that's a primary reason that it can seem to miraculously almost fix anything, which makes it seem too good to be true, but it's not. When your body's functioning better, things get better. So we go deep in the science here. If you have any questions about red light therapy, if you're a little bit skeptical of all the proclaimed benefits, this episode is for you. We also discuss things like how you can use red light therapy for weight loss and even targeted fat reduction. Yes, I said it. People say you can't target stubborn fat. We discuss that in detail in this episode. The show notes for today's episode will be at melanieavalon.com/Joovv. And I will also put a link in the show notes to a very extensive blog post that I've written on red light therapy, and that has a lot of links to many of the studies which do support the findings that we discuss in this episode. If after listening to this episode, you'd like to jump on the red light therapy train, I want to assure you that the Joovv devices, which I personally use, love, and adore, they are so key for achieving all of the benefits that we discuss in this episode because they do use the exact wavelengths that are needed and scientifically shown to create all of the effects that we discuss. That's why I am so passionate not only about red light therapy, but Joovv in particular, because they do have that attention to detail and they do create devices that will create these effects. And if you use the link joovv.com/MelanieAvalon and use the code MelanieAvalon and forward your proof of purchase to podcast@MelanieAvalon.com, you will get two things. You'll get a gift from Joovv, but you will also get a gift from me. I will send you a signed copy of my book, What When Wine? Lose Weight and Feel Great with Paleo-Style Meals, Intermittent Fasting, and Wine. I do have a very, very exciting announcement for you guys. I am a Himalaya partnered show, and like I said before, if you follow me in the Himalaya app, which is my favorite app to listen to all podcasts, you will get early access to the show 24 hours in advance. But here comes the exciting news. The Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast Himalaya community is now live. I'm super excited about it. So basically, for $3.99 a month, you can join my exclusive community. You can discuss the episodes with fellow listeners, ask questions. If you'd like to hear from a certain biohacker or author or researcher, you can directly request it in that community and I will get on it ASAP. And what I am most thrilled about is each month I'm going to provide some new awesome content for you guys. So it'll be things like quizzes to find your perfect intermittent fasting protocol, delicious gluten-free recipes, guides to hacking stubborn fat, supplement recommendations, so many things. And you can get the first month for free. Yes, for free. Just use the promo code Melanie. You can join the community, engage in the discussion, and get free stuff from me. So hopefully I'll see you there. Speaking of communities, definitely join my Facebook group. It is Paleo OMAD Biohackers, Intermittent Fasting plus Real Foods plus Life. We discuss all the things there, anything you can think of. It's a wonderful community and I would love to see you there. Also, before we jump in, if you're looking to further upgrade your life with some amazing grass-fed, grass-finished beef including delicious steaks, the best steak I've ever had in my entire life, and yes, that is true, delicious heritage pork, additive-free bacon, sustainable seafood, and organic free-range chicken, you've got to try ButcherBox. They are amazing. With ButcherBox, you can get high-quality, health-supporting steaks, pork chops, seafood shipped straight to your door, and it's very affordable because they take out the middleman, which would be the grocery store, by working directly with responsible farmers and shipping straight to you. I'm obsessed with ButcherBox. I'm never looking back. Some of the things I really love about them is they really, really care about the raising practices of the animals on their farms. So you can be assured that you will get the healthiest cuts of beef that are very rich in nutrition, free of toxins that are rampant in conventional animal products, and honestly meals that you can just feel good about and will make you feel great physically. And if you go to butcherbox.com/MelanieAvalon and use the code MelanieAvalon, you will get not only $20 off your first order, but also free ground beef for life. Yes, that is grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef, 2 pounds of it in every single shipment for the rest of your life. All right, so without further ado, please enjoy the show. We have the co-founder of Joovv, Scott Nelson, on the podcast. Scott, wonderful to speak with you again and to have you back. And I'm super excited for today. So thank you for being here.
No, absolutely. I'm really looking forward to the conversation and excited to chat about this again with you, Melanie.
Me too. So to start things off, would you like to give listeners a brief overview of your personal history and how you came to develop the Joovv devices, how you got into the whole red light, near infrared therapy, that whole world?
Yeah, sure. I spent the majority of my professional career in the traditional medical device space, and more specifically, the peripheral vascular arena. So for those that kind of aren't or haven't ever spent time in that world, which is I'm assuming most of the listeners here, I was dealing with products like arterial stents and venous thrombectomy catheters, and like much more traditional kind of products within the Western healthcare space. That's actually why we were in Minneapolis as part of a job relocation with Covidian at the time. So yeah, that was my wheelhouse. And so this was back in early 2015 when my wife and her sister purchased, I'm using air quotes here because we're not on video, but they purchased a red light therapy package at a local spa in Minneapolis. Saw really good results after going consistently to this spa for 4 to 5 times a week over the course of about 2 to 3 months. And the benefits that they noticed most was reduction in eczema, reduction in stretch marks due to multiple pregnancies, et cetera. So they were really excited about the therapy, but weren't overly excited about having to go to a spa that often on such a consistent basis, and it wasn't overly budget friendly as you can imagine either. And so my wife's sister Melissa convinced her husband Justin, who's an engineer, to build her some sort of prototype that they could use at home. Because nothing really existed on the market at the time when it comes to full body red light therapy. And she just didn't want to go to a spa at all. So Justin began to kind of build out some prototypes, and they looped in me because of my med tech background. And I was super skeptical at first. I thought it was complete woo-woo science. Here I was kind of doing the real medical stuff. And then they were super stoked about this, red light therapy thing. And so I was naturally skeptical, but I started digging into the research, starting with PubMed, and was quickly blown away about at the sheer amount of published peer-reviewed literature demonstrating the wide variety of benefits when it comes to light therapy. And in the world of academia, it's referred to as photobiomodulation. And so I was, quickly blown away. And then, like I mentioned before, there wasn't really any other products on the market that were full body in nature and deliver the type of power that's needed in order to receive a clinically relevant dose of energy when you when you're using clinical studies as a baseline reference point. And so we didn't really intend to start a company at that time. It was just kind of one of those things where the science is really, really compelling, and there weren't really any other products on the market that sort of met the specifications that we were looking for. And so that's kind of what started us on our journey with Joovv. That was back in 2015, and then we ended up launching our first product in February of 2016. It's kind of been a wild ride ever since.
That's definitely a crazy ride. Yeah, I remember when I first learned about red light therapy, it was a few years ago. And same with you, I was like, oh, it can't be. It seemed very like woo woo. What can light do? What can red light do? And then when I first found out about it, I went old school, kind of similar to like making your own version. I would like order these bulbs online and try to set up my own thing. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing. But since then, I've, like you, have done research and just realized how scientific and amazing, and the scientific benefits of red light therapy have really been clinically studied, and it's almost shocking what it can do. And I think it's really important for listeners to understand how the red light therapy and near-infrared therapy works, like what's actually going on. And then it makes more sense why it can have so many therapeutic health benefits, as well as like the skin benefits and things like that. So would you like to jump into that a little bit? Like what exactly is, quote, red light therapy? There's also near-infrared therapy. Your devices are capable often of doing both. So for listeners, what's going on here?
Sure. And just to circle back around on your comment about the clinical data that you noticed, the compelling clinical data. One of the last products that I launched at Medtronic was a class 3 device that was aimed at closing down a vein for the purposes of treating chronic venous insufficiency. And that particular product, although it was a class 3 device, was only supported by 3 different distinct studies. One of which only had a decently sized patient population. And for comparison purposes, light therapy, especially continuous wave light therapy, which is what our devices deliver, is supported by over 200 double-blind, placebo-controlled randomized trials. So it's the science is really, really legit. In fact, it's really the only therapy of its kind that I know of that's supported by this much peer-reviewed science. So although it sounds super woo-woo, there's no doubt if you give it a chance and really kind of just start to peel back the layers, I'm pretty convinced you'll find it equally as compelling as me and as Melanie. But back to your original question about the mechanism of action, this field is still relatively new, so we're continuing to learn more about the different mechanisms at play all the time. But the core thing that's going on is really at the cellular level, and so these wavelengths of light, red and then near infrared, and I'm sure we'll get into kind of the differences here in a bit. But these specific wavelengths have a unique ability to resonate with certain enzymes during cellular respiration. And what that allows your cells to do is produce more ATP energy. And because of that core mechanism of action, which is probably the most well understood within the space, that leads to a whole host of clinically proven benefits, everything from faster muscle recovery to better skin health through increased collagen production, to enhanced cognitive function, to better sleep, to faster weight loss or fat loss, to enhanced peak athletic performance. I mean, it literally sounds like a late night QVC commercial, but the big difference here is that all of those benefits that I just mentioned are supported by peer-reviewed, published medical science.
So in a way, it's like charging the battery of your cells. Would that be an appropriate comparison?
Exactly. Another guy from our team likes to use the analogy of a solar panel, right? So everyone is, not everyone, but I would venture to say the overwhelming majority of the listeners here understand that, or have seen a solar panel on a house, especially in warmer climates. Well, that solar panel is collecting energy from the sun and reusing it elsewhere. Our bodies are sort of similar in that we have the ability to sort of capture energy from the sun and repurpose it for other things. And that's what, at a very high level, that's what light therapy is in essence doing.
Okay, so I have a weird question, but this is something I've been thinking about. So how are the mitochondria both creating energy, but not being drained by creating more energy?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. And when we say enhanced energy production, at the end of the day, these wavelengths of light actually help restore normal cellular function. And so, as an example, I think that's the better way to think about it. And what I mean by that is during there's 4 phases of cellular respiration, and we're talking about just one mechanism at play. There's other mechanisms that probably are less understood. But this core mechanism of action is the magic happens during the 4th phase of cellular respiration. And when our cells are under stress, the process that happens during cellular respiration is disrupted. And one example would be excess nitric oxide, which can be a good thing, but excess nitric oxide has a tendency to bind with oxygen during cellular respiration. That actually halts ADP, which is a precursor to ATP. And so your cellular respiration is disrupted, when our cells are under stress. And these wavelengths of light actually help break the bond between nitric oxide and oxygen, restoring normal cellular function. So I think instead of thinking about how your cells are producing more energy, but they're also consuming more energy, I think it's just the better way to think about it is it's restoring actually a more normal cellular function.
So in a way, it might be like the difference between, okay, maybe people can stick with me here, like an old broken car that's not really running well. So it's doesn't have energy. It's not moving. It's just kind of sitting there versus, a nice, expensive, brand new car that you're really having to take care of. You're having to give really nice fuel to, and it's going to be performing. It's going to be creating more energy, generating more energy, doing more, performing more, which in a way seems like it takes more energy, but in the end, it's performing like way better. And longevity wise, it's probably going to last longer, even though it's requiring more energy in a way.
Yep, you got it. Yeah. In essence, your cells are operating it with more efficiency. I think that example is a good one. And I mentioned different mechanisms of action, and I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but there are certainly other mechanisms at play. It's pretty well understood that you do get better cell signaling, right, through these wavelengths of light, red and near infrared light. You get enhanced gene transcription, which actually creates different signaling pathways, which is why these wavelengths of light have been shown to enhance cognitive function. I mean, those are some other mechanisms. There's another actually researcher that we work with here in Southern California, Dr. Laszlo Boros. Although the science isn't as robust, his theory is that these wavelengths of light actually change the viscosity of metabolic water, which basically allows for more efficiency along the electron transport chain during cellular respiration. And so there's a lot of different, there's some different theories at play, and there's even one more, which I think we'll get to maybe when we talk a little bit about weight loss with red and near infrared light. But there's certainly different mechanisms at play. But I think the important point is to think about these types of wavelengths and their ability to sort of induce a more efficient cellular energy production.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. I think I too often am pondering the nature of longevity and expending energy versus using energy and aging. And so that's where that's all coming from. I guess we should probably tackle some of the basics so listeners have even a better idea of what's going on. So what is the difference between red light versus near infrared? Because those are like the two different types of light offered on the Joovv devices.
Sure. And that's probably one of the most common questions that comes up. And they both from a macro perspective, they both have a very similar mechanism of action. But the major difference is in regards to depth of penetration in your body. So most of the energy from red light is absorbed in the dermis and epidermis of your skin. So that's why it tends to be really good for skin-related benefits and really any sort of superficial tissue treatment, whereas near-infrared light actually has the ability to penetrate further into your body. In fact, near-infrared can penetrate through bone. The energy does dissipate through bone as it travels through it. But that's why near-infrared light is often studied for deeper tissue treatments like muscle recovery and joint pain relief and cognitive function. So that's the biggest difference between the two. But if we even take a step further back, one of the core concepts that I'd love to leave your audience with is just like a basic understanding of the fact that our bodies respond and metabolize to different based on exposure to different wavelengths of light. In fact, the entire light spectrum is very, very broad. And similar to how our bodies, respond and metabolize different macronutrients, right, from proteins to carbs to fats, and at different times of the day, right? So we most of us know that if we eat a high glycemic carbohydrate at night, that's not great because our insulin spikes as a result of that. Where if you kind of understand that, our bodies do respond in a similar fashion to these different wavelengths of light, and red and near infrared light fall within a very narrow window that photomedicine researchers refer to as the optical window or the therapeutic window. And these wavelengths of light have a unique ability enhance cellular efficient production of energy at the cellular level, which we just discussed. So not all light is created. Our bodies respond differently to various wavelengths of light, but red and near infrared light are supported by the most scientific literature for the wide variety of benefits that we kind of chatted about just recently here.
So the red hue color that we see, for example, with the rising and setting sun, is that related to this red light? Is that similar wavelengths?
Yeah, definitely. In fact, if you kind of harken back to, our ancestors 150, 200 years ago, they didn't use artificial lighting to illuminate, their houses or their workplaces, right? They, for the most part, relied on the rising and setting of the sun, or maybe even candlelight. Whereas you compare that to the lives that most of us live now, it's drastically different. There's a well-known stat that Americans now spend 93% of our time indoors under artificial light. And that's just such a drastic change in a relatively short amount of time. And so we're asking our biological systems to adapt very, very, very quickly to a drastic change in light exposure. When you look at the natural sunrise and sunset, there's an overabundance of red and near infrared light on a percentage basis, and when the sun rises, and then again when it sets. If you're really looking to optimize, the use of light therapy, that's when we generally recommend using it either in the morning or in the evening to mimic the natural sunrise and sunset, because that's when you find red and near infrared light most concentrated.
Yeah, I love with my own Joovv devices. I cannot tell you how much I love turning it on when I wake up in the morning and then having it on at night. I thought it was like just me, like kind of in my head, that it, really put me into like a Zen state. But I found it to be so therapeutic. And then I've seen the studies on the relationship to the circadian rhythms and then also to mood. So it's definitely scientifically supported as well. It's all in my head because it's my feelings, but it's not all in my head, I don't think.
I don't think so either. When you sort of understand that, most of us have adapted, over time, our grandparents, our great grandparents, et cetera, they adapted to the sunrise and sunset, and our lives are drastically different. So it would make sense, just like it makes sense to probably eat a more a whole food centric, diet. It makes sense that, we would be using wavelengths that are kind of found in the natural sunrise and sunset of the day.
Another question about the wavelengths before we move on from that. So since near infrared penetrates deeper into the tissues beyond the red light, does it like on the way through create the same benefits of the red light since it's passing through anyway? Or is it more specifically targeting deeper within? So for people who, are really wanting to address like skin issues, for example, would they benefit equally from like near infrared and red light, or would they actually want to get the red light because that's going to focus more on the outer layer?
I mean, I would tend to think you're going to get more bang for your buck with red light because again, most of that energy is going to be absorbed by cells in the dermis and epidermis of your skin. So that's not to say that some of that energy from near infrared light is absorbed by those same layers of skin, but you're probably going to get faster and better results with red light alone. But most of the customers that use our devices use both wavelengths, and that's why we give people the option of choosing red, near infrared, or both. But most of the time, people are using both because you do kind of get the sort of the superficial tissue benefits, but also you kind of reap the benefits in your deeper tissues as well by using near infrared light.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because with my device, I typically use both wavelengths at the same time. But then when you guys release the Joovv Go, which is like the miniature Joovv that you can bring with you, it's available in red or near infrared. And so I was receiving questions about, which one should I get? And then there's a lot of conversation that's being stimulated. And some people were saying that, well, you should get near infrared because it's going to do the same thing as red plus more. But that makes more sense hearing it from you now. It's like, where is the bulk of that energy ultimately penetrating? And I can see how the red light, you would get more bang for your buck with the skin layer versus the deeper with the near infrared. So that's good. I mean, like I said, I with my mini, I keep them both on. So yep. I love it. Love it. Love it. One other reason I am really, really interested in red light therapy personally is for detox, which also a lot of people are often thinking that that's like a woo-woo thing, detox. But I think more and more we're realizing how important it is to support our body's natural detoxification systems. It drives me crazy because they'll say things like, oh, your body naturally detoxes, so you don't need to, do anything beyond that. And I'm like, what? Yeah, we're on the struggle bus today, I think, with our modern environments. And I think we could definitely support all of our natural detox that we can. So do you have studies or any information about how red light therapy, infrared therapy can support our natural detoxification?
Yeah, and I think you bring up a really good point in the sense that people use the word detox in a wide variety of ways. So it kind of depends on sort of your understanding of what detox truly means. And I guess specific or within the context of red and near infrared light therapy, it's been pretty well demonstrated that these wavelengths of light help your immune system shift from what's called an M1 phenotype to an M2 phenotype, meaning it shifts from a pro-inflammatory state to an anti-inflammatory state. And at the end of the day, what that means is these red and near infrared wavelengths of light actually help boost your immune system into something that's anti-inflammatory. And so you do get a little bit of a natural sort of, I'm using air quotes again, detox-like effect by simply strengthening your immune system to fight toxins, to fight bacteria, et cetera. So it is a little bit more of a natural way to detox. So it's not like a sauna where you feel like you're sweating out certain toxins. It's not like that because these wavelengths of light actually don't produce much heat at all. But they do help your immune system become stronger to naturally fight some of the unwanted things that are kind of circulating throughout our systems.
Yeah, that's something I've been really fascinated with, especially recently, is just the concept of the immune system and how basically with any invader or any toxin or anything that our immune system is dealing with, it can respond to that, and it can do so in an inflammatory way or in a more anti-inflammatory way. I've been researching a lot the work of like cold exposure and Wim Hof and things like that, and there's been fascinating studies about how with any given toxin or bacteria or virus that the immune system can respond, like I said, and like you said, in a more anti-inflammatory or inflammatory way. So by using red light therapy to modulate the immune system, that's just the best of both worlds with everything, because then you're just priming yourself for being able to deal better with, the daily things that we're hit with all the time as far as environmental toxins, bacteria, viruses, all the things. And then you brought up something else. So I'm glad you brought this up. You were comparing it to saunas. And I think that's another thing that a lot of people wonder, what is the difference exactly between red light therapy, near infrared therapy, far infrared therapy, which is often used in a lot of saunas, compared to saunas. So then there's the infrared saunas, but then there's also like dry saunas. I think people get a little bit confused about everything.
You got it. Like there actually are a wide variety of different saunas. I think most of us here in the US are probably more familiar with dry or infrared saunas, as they're often referred to as. But if you would go to Europe, you might see a much more wide variety of saunas, especially wet or steam-based saunas. At the end of the day, the goal with the sauna is to induce heat stress, right? That's why you're supposed to get hot in a sauna. The intention is to induce heat stress on your body, which is drastically different than light therapy or photobiomodulation. I would like to compare it to the equivalent of cardiovascular exercise and weight training. They're very different. Both can be very good, but they're just different. You don't find someone going out for a jog, but also doing weightlifting at the same time. You know what I mean? So that's probably the best way to kind of think about saunas and light therapy. Is they're both good, but they're both very different. And a good dry sauna that's using infrared light to induce heat stress. Most of that infrared light is actually falls or should fall in the mid to far infrared range. And just to kind of take a step back, the infrared, the window of infrared wavelengths is actually very broad. It's it stretches anywhere from about 800 nanometers to 20,000 nanometers. So it's actually very broad. And the wavelengths within that infrared spectrum that generate the most heat are mid and far infrared wavelengths. And the infrared that we're talking about when it comes to light therapy is actually near infrared. So near infrared light doesn't can still penetrate pretty deep into your body, but does not produce heat. That's not the goal with light therapy. And so some people have this kind of misconception of using, a near infrared sauna, and that's sort of a contradiction in terms, because near infrared wavelengths of light just don't produce heat. So that there are, they're just, it's just good and healthy to kind of understand that both sauna-based therapy and then light therapy or photobiomodulation are just two distinctly separate things.
So they all have their place.
They do. I would argue that light therapy or photo PBM or photobiomodulation is supported by way more science than sauna based therapy. But saunas are good too. Like there's a lot of compelling evidence that people should be using saunas on a consistent basis. So both are good, just different.
Yep, I did the sauna today, and I've had my Joovv today, so it's all good. I would probably have my Joovv on right now if the fan weren't a little bit noisy for recording. Okay, another big topic that a lot of people wonder about: weight loss and targeted fat reduction. Can red light therapy or near infrared help with that?
Yeah, and in fact, there's some really, really well-structured, some of the more well-structured studies actually that you'll find in kind of the light therapy space are specific to weight loss or fat reduction. It might be a little bit easier to think about it in the context of body contouring. But this is yet another different sort of mechanism of action as to how this actually works. Most researchers that have studied this to any great degree have reported that these wavelengths of light actually help create a more porous membrane within your adipose cells, your fat cells, and by creating that a more porous membrane, those cells actually shrink, right? Almost like a sponge, like they just simply shrink because they're more porous in nature, and so you get this reduction in fat cells, which is why you get this kind of this contouring effect with the use of red and near infrared light. And so there's some really, really compelling data. You wouldn't normally think about, weight loss and experiencing weight loss or fat reduction with these wavelengths of light, but it's the science is certainly compelling. In addition to what I just mentioned, there's also this upregulation in your metabolism as well when using these wavelengths of light, because as we discussed earlier, your cells become more efficient at what they do with exposure to red and near infrared light. So a couple different mechanisms at play, but without a doubt, the science is pretty compelling that it's a nice sort of nice added benefit to using light therapy or red light therapy on a consistent basis. Because I think everyone wouldn't mind dropping a few pounds.
Hi guys. I hope you're enjoying this episode on red light therapy. If you'd like to further support your health with a glass or two of wine, which I know I do, and we know wine has health benefits, then you've got to listen to this. You know how I was saying that the specific wavelength of red light is key for achieving those health benefits? It's kind of similar with wine. Only a certain type of wine may create those health benefits. And why is that? It's because most conventional wine is actually full, I tell you, of toxins. Think things like pesticides, molds, additives, colorizers, high alcohol content, high sugar. So basically you could be drinking that wine thinking you're getting a lot of health benefits, when really you might be doing some damage to your body. Thankfully, there's a company called Dry Farm Wines. They go throughout Europe and they find the wineries practicing organic practices, but better yet, they test the wines to make sure the wines are low sugar, low alcohol, free of toxins, free of mold, and truly supportive of your health. If you are at all a wine drinker, I cannot advocate enough that you try them out. And if you go to dryfarmwines.com/MelanieAvalon, you can get a bottle for a penny. Yes, a penny. So yay for all the free things. Like I said at the beginning with ButcherBox, you can get 2 pounds of grass-fed, grass-finished ground beef for life. Now you can get a bottle of wine for a penny. It just goes on and on. And lastly, speaking of toxins, for any ladies listening to this podcast, if you want to clean up your skincare routine and makeup, you've got to check out Beautycounter. They make amazing makeup that actually works, actually looks amazing, and is created to be free of toxins and truly supportive of your skin's health. And if you go to beautycounter.com/MelanieAvalon, then you will receive a Beautycounter gift shipped straight from me after placing your first order. All right, now enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, and I think We're always told that you can't spot reduce fat, that basically you got to just go on a fat loss diet or a fat loss lifestyle, and it's going to leave from where it wants to leave, when it wants to leave, based on hormones or genetics or whatever. But seems like in theory, just because I'm always thinking about hacking, fat burning and things like that, that with red light, you could, in theory, like you said, it's more like contouring, but you could target very specific fat cells or deposits on your body and in a way free them up to be used as energy. Because like when I was reading through the different studies, it was interesting because there was a lot of proposed mechanisms for how the red light affects fat cells. But like one thing I was reading that, it makes the cells basically, I think like you said, more porous, and then the fatty acids can, enter the bloodstream, and then you could, in theory, burn them off. So that would be a way that you could almost spot reduce fat. And I was thinking if you paired it with something like a dietary approach, like intermittent fasting, for example, or like a ketogenic diet or something like that, where you're really in a fat burning mode, that maybe pairing that with light therapy could be a way to really target fat stores. Do you know if there are any studies on, like emerging studies on the ketogenic diet and pairing it with red light therapy, or intermittent fasting and red light therapy? Have you heard of anything like that?
I haven't seen anything specific to intermittent fasting and red light therapy. I can say that we're actually enrolling participants in a study right now with a group in Minneapolis, Bristlecone Medical, studying actually the synergy between full body red light therapy and people on the ketogenic diet. So our control group is actually people on a normal healthy diet, and then our experimental group is keto plus red light. We'll likely work in another segment of just the ketogenic diet to compare and contrast those results. But I think this topic is really interesting as a whole. One of the researchers I mentioned earlier in our conversation, Dr. Laszlo Boros, he's part of a group here in Southern California called the Center for Deuterium Depletion. He works with other doctors that are part of that group, Dr. Ann Cooper, Dr. Q Collins. But Dr. Boros, he's an MD and tenured professor at UCLA, he actually believes that, and I think I mentioned this earlier, that red and near infrared light actually helped change the viscosity of metabolic water, which by changing the viscosity of metabolic water, you're able to naturally lower deuterium levels. And if you have too much deuterium in your body, those heavy hydrogen atoms or heavy hydrogen isotopes, I should probably describe them as, can actually break the nanomotors in your mitochondria. And when those nanomotors break, that halts cellular respiration. And by changing the viscosity of metabolic water, you're actually able to prevent those nanometers from breaking. At the end of the day, you're actually naturally lowering your deuterium levels.
So can we define deuterium?
Yeah, and I probably should have started there. But deuterium is it's sometimes referred to as heavy hydrogen. It's a hydrogen isotope, and hydrogen is the most common sort of element found in the universe, especially within our bodies. And when you have too much of it, basically that heavy hydrogen isotope gets stuck in those nanomotors within your mitochondria. And think of nanomotors almost like cylinders in a car engine, right? They're spinning fast, and when this heavy hydrogen or deuterium when your cells are trying to process this, they get stuck in those nanomotors, and as a result, those nanomotors break. And so that's why, when you look at a ketogenic diet, or even when you intermittently fast, you're naturally lowering your deuterium levels in your body. So there's less sort of nanomotor breaking going on, for lack of a better description. And red light acts in a very synergistic way because you're able to change the viscosity of metabolic water. You're able to naturally lower those same deuterium levels, and helping to restore a more normal, more efficient cellular energy production. And so there's a lot of synergy. I mean, a lot of what I'm just going through is fairly theoretical, and I'm certainly not an expert in this field by no means. It's only through working with some of those researchers that I mentioned earlier that we're learning a little bit more about these fields. But we hope to prove out this theory in that clinical study that we've kicked off recently with Bristol Cone Medical in Minneapolis. So it's certainly an interesting topic, and I think these theories will be showcased to be true through some of this clinical work.
That is so fascinating. So by regulating the deuterium levels, I mean, it sounds like it's really keeping things clean in a way, like keeping things from building up throughout the cells.
You got it. It's kind of like, think of like a lot, when you have a lot of deuterium in your body, think of it's almost like kind of sludge, if you will, right?
That's what I was thinking. I think about that all the time.
And the sludge kind of gets caught up in your cells, you know, and the mitochondria, like they're you know, and if you harken back to your high school biology days, they're like the powerhouses of the cell, the engines of the cell. And when your engines are kind of full of sludge, they don't work as well. And so that's kind of, you know, for people that are sort of new to kind of understanding deuterium and what that means for our health, that's kind of the best way to think about it. Is it's sludge that gets caught up in the engines of our cells. And, you know, intermittent fasting, eating a ketogenic diet, using, you know, being exposed to red and near infrared light on a consistent basis, that all those types of modalities or lifestyles help to balance or lower and then balance out your deuterium levels, which lead to just a more efficient cellular energy production.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say it reminds me of something with intermittent fasting, like autophagy, keeping things kind of cleared out, or with a ketogenic diet, just running cleaner. So you're not creating all that sludge, that oxidative stress and all those byproducts that your body has to deal with.
Yeah, we should just rename the podcast, you know, this episode, you know, how red light can reduce your sludge, you know, I mean,
I might do that. Perfect. And I'm also really, really fascinated by that study you're doing. That's really exciting. I don't know how much you can actually talk about it, but did you say that it's going to be, so will it be people on a keto diet doing red light and people on a normal diet also doing red light?
Yep. So it's part of a series of studies that we've actually recently kicked off, some of which are with this group in Minneapolis that I mentioned, Bristol Cone Medical, but we also kicked off will be kicking off a few studies in the month of May and June with another group in Sao Paulo, Brazil, studying full body light therapy for muscle recovery and peak athletic performance. But yeah, these two particular studies we're really going to look at hormonal health as kind of the core endpoint, specifically in men, testosterone to estrogen ratios, and then in women, estrogen to progesterone ratios, and how a ketogenic diet plus red light therapy can help balance those out. And so right now, the two sort of cohorts that we're enrolling are people on a normal diet, and then people on a ketogenic diet plus red and near infrared light therapy.
Will the normal diet people be doing red light therapy?
Yes, they will be. Yep, you got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify.
Yep. Yeah. So eventually we want to have another cohort that's just on the ketogenic diet as well. So you'll have a ketogenic, you know, with and without red light, but eventually we'll get to that point. But one of our core sort of theories as a company is that full body light therapy is optimal. And so in all of these studies, participants will be using full body light therapy. And so we're pretty excited about that as well, as kind of really showcasing the overall health benefits of full body light therapy versus just a targeted approach.
For the people for any studies that you do, when it would be with or without red light therapy, would you want to construct it so that it's with red light therapy and completely without, or with red light therapy and then with like a sham red light? So they would still think that they were doing red light. Eventually,
like these particular studies that we're not using now won't involve like a sham, like you mentioned. So it's hard to do a sham with red light. We'd probably have to do it with near infrared light, since it's invisible to the naked eye. It's a little bit easier to conduct a trial like that. But nonetheless, yeah, we do eventually hope to. We'll continue to work with the overall topic of using our full body devices in clinical studies is something that we'll continue to do more of in the future. We're super passionate about that. Like really proving out some of these things that we've been talking about. We want to prove them out in clinical studies.
I love that. And I love that you brought up the hormonal aspect as well. That's fantastic. I know also when I first got into red light therapy a few years ago, I was initially intrigued by it for two things: for hair growth, because my hair has always been very, very thin, but also for hypothyroidism, because I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism, and I saw things here and there about how red light therapy could benefit that. And it's really fascinating, some of the studies I've read since then, where they have had people undergo red light therapy who had hypothyroidism. And some people have been able in the studies to go off of their thyroid medication, which I'm not saying that, go off your thyroid medication with your Joovv device, but I'm saying there's definitely a lot of, clinically studied information out there about how these wavelengths can affect hormones, thyroid, everything.
Yeah. And I would say, like, there's certain buckets of published clinical science in this arena that are really, really robust. And what I mean by that is when you look at the skin health benefits that come from using red light therapy, the reduction in joint pain and inflammation, the faster muscle recovery, athletic performance with near-infrared light therapy, as an example. There's endless amounts of studies that demonstrate positive benefits in those categories. And then there's others that are sort of emerging, one of which is this concept of hormonal health. And I would say that, in comparison, the research is still very early. But yeah, it's pretty compelling nonetheless, especially with thyroid health. And some of those patients being able to completely come off. In fact, I think it was over 50% in one of the trials that I'm thinking of. It was over 50% of the participants actually completely came off their thyroid medication. And then the other segments of those participants actually saw a significantly reduced amount of thyroid medications that they had to consume by simply exposing the thyroid gland to red and near infrared light. So I would say it's early, but it's really, really promising. And so that's a category that we as a company want to study more. It's one of the reasons we, some of our first studies are involving hormonal health, because we've received so much anecdotal feedback from thousands of customers around how some have gotten their blood work done, others haven't. It's more anecdotal. But across the board, this concept of better or more balanced hormonal health from using red and near infrared light therapy is really consistent feedback that we get. And so that's one of the reasons we wanted to again kind of prove this out in a clinical study for ourselves.
Yeah, and that really speaks to the foundational mechanisms going on here with the therapy, because clearly red light is not giving you thyroid hormone. There's no thyroid hormone in light, but by changing the way the body functions and actually healing it on a cellular level and upgrading that makes sense. It makes sense why it can help so many things, because it can seem like too good to be true. Like, oh, red light can help you burn fat. It can help your thyroid. It can help your hair growth. It can help your muscle recovery. It can help your sleep, your mood. And it's like, really, like, how can one thing do all of that? But when you see it from the foundational level of, well, it just makes sense because it's helping your whole body perform better. It's addressing energy production and how your body's actually functioning. So that in a way, quote, explains how it can have so many benefits. Kind of like with intermittent fasting, which, another passion of mine, or a healthy dietary approach, why those can have such broad ranging therapeutic and health benefits.
You got it. That's a question that often comes up, is like how, especially when with people that are new to this type of therapy, and you start mentioning all of the benefits, it sounds too good to be true, and that's when the cynicism starts to set in. But it is one of the really cool things about operating in this arena, is that there's so much science that supports it that it's easy to understand why someone might be cynical. But once you begin to look at the science, most people think, even if they give it a little bit of the time of day, so to speak, they walk away, feeling really compelled to try it. And then the reason there's such a laundry list of benefits is because some of the core mechanism of action at play is really inducing more normal cellular function. Especially with the lifestyles we live, we're exposed to a lot of different stressors all the time. And so by helping our cells function in a normal capacity, they're able to do kind of what our bodies were intended to do, right? Grow hair, stay relatively lean, recover faster from movement, et cetera, et cetera. So it kind of begins to sort of make sense when you connect the dot, take a step back and kind of connect the dots. But certainly understand why, someone might be a little bit cynical when first kind of learning about light therapy.
It's like the gift that keeps on giving. So you may want it for one thing, but it's really amazing because then it can help so many other things.
You got it.
So if you're on the fence about trying out red light therapy, just saying for listeners, don't be on the fence. even if you're skeptical about it helping, probably there's, something that you want to target with it. Even if you're skeptical, there's so many other potentials beyond that of things that can help that you really can't go wrong.
Yep, you got it.
Something you did touch on that we probably should touch on as well is muscle recovery. So for people, and also pain and inflammation. So people who are doing sports exercise, or for people who have injuries and pain, what do you see with red light therapy and near infrared therapy benefiting that? And is that more for the near infrared that you would want to focus on with pain and inflammation, or what would be the best route to go about addressing that?
Yep. Probably near infrared light. It has definitely been studied more often with these certain categories. And these areas, muscle recovery, joint pain and inflammation reduction. There's so much science that supports these benefits in these areas. In fact, our customers that buy our devices for these two, whether it's they want faster muscle recovery or reduced joint pain, relief from joint pain, they tend to notice results that much faster. And as an example, we have a lot of professional and performance athletes that are using our devices, and they're typically so in tune with how their body responds to a certain workout. Well, within a few treatments of using, red and near infrared light, they're just recovering faster, right? They feel a lot differently the next day. So there's a lot of anecdotal feedback, but when you look at the science, the science is very, very clear that these wavelengths of light help your muscles recover faster. And the cool thing about joint pain and really recovery in general is that red and near infrared light has been shown to actually help both with acute and chronic inflammation. So it helps your body heal faster from an acute injury, but also because of that shift, from an M1 to an M2 phenotype in regards to your immune system that we kind of chatted about earlier, you get benefits when it comes to chronic inflammation as well. So it's to your point, Melanie. I think you summed it up well. It is the gift that kind of keeps on giving, because it has profound benefits in both the acute and kind of chronic phases of injury.
Yeah, that was one of the more recent things that I started using it for. It's interesting. So I personally have a lot of IBS type problems and food reactions and things like that. And I always have this sort of weird feeling in my abdomen, which I'd always associated with food. And I was thinking it was like a microbiome type thing, but I experimented and started using my Joovv device on that area. And I was shocked. It's funny because I was I've been such a fan of Joovv and red light, and I talk about it all the time, and I've experienced the benefits, but I was like, oh, it won't actually do anything for, this feeling that I get in my abdomen. But I started using it, and it went away. I was like, oh, it actually does do that. I keep preaching it, but the more and more I try it, the more and more it really lives up to what it's supposed to do.
That's cool.
I remember when we were talking on the intermittent fasting podcast, which that was a while ago. I forgot how long ago that was. But you had mentioned briefly that there were some emerging studies about how red light therapy affected the microbiome. Do you know if there's any more data for that?
There hasn't been much additional data published, and I think it's been probably nine months ago maybe that we last recorded a podcast. But unfortunately there hasn't been a lot of advancements in that arena. That's actually another category that we hope to explore further with our devices. But for those that haven't listened to that particular episode or are kind of new to this concept of using red and near infrared light to help establish a more healthy gut microbiome, it's very early, but researchers from a group of researchers in Sydney clearly showcased this kind of concept with the use of near infrared light, which is completely counterintuitive because you wouldn't expect near infrared light to penetrate that deep. or at least the energy would be significantly dissipated, penetrating that deep into the body. But they were able to, they proposed a very kind of a metabolic, a very metabolic mechanism of action for these wavelengths of light and their ability to help establish a healthy gut microbiome, which is kind of a different, a little bit of a different mechanism. But that kind of ties into our theory as a company, in that when irradiating your entire body with these healthy wavelengths of light, you'll get those systemic benefits that are advantageous across a wide variety of areas, more so than you would with just targeted treatments. I mean, there's certainly some advantage to targeted treatments, whether it's weight loss or reducing, joint pain and inflammation in a certain area. But ultimately, full body light therapy is optimal for overall health. And I think, what those researchers from Australia demonstrated was that's clearly the case. The more systemic the dose of energy is, that's probably better for overall health.
Well, going off of that, so if red light therapy is upregulating metabolism and energy generation, have you heard of any studies or any feedback about red light therapy and appetite? I noticed this very definitively the other day. This was like an epiphany I had like 2 days ago, actually, because I am recently in the middle of a move and my stuff got locked up in the moving company. They say, oh, it'll be there in 5 days. Yeah, that didn't happen.
Right.
So my stuff, I didn't have my stuff for like over 2 weeks. And I had my Joovv go, but I didn't have my bigger device. And I was like dying, by the way. And my stuff finally came. I got my Joovv device back. But I've been noticing that this could be completely anecdotal, but without having my daily Joovv in my life and everything, I mean, it could be a lot of things, but I was struggling a lot with cravings and appetite and things like that. And just got my Joovv back again, and was feeling a little bit hungry because I do intermittent fasting every day, but I was feeling like this weird craving food, felt like things were struggling. I turned on my Joovv, and I promise you, my appetite just like died. It like killed my craving. I was shocked. That could be completely placebo. It's very possible. Could be completely anecdotal, but I'm just wondering if you've heard that from anybody else.
I haven't personally, and I was just looking at this database of research that we've curated. I think it's over 3,000 studies or something like that. I just did a quick simple search, and I didn't see anything in that database either. But that's certainly interesting, and I don't want to diminish the fact that it could have very well been a result of using red and near infrared light, but I'm not aware of any clinical studies that kind of showcase that.
Well, to-do list then.
Right, add that to the list, right?
So, I mean, I guess it just makes sense though that anything that would boost metabolism and help with energy regulation could help. I mean, it would make sense to me that it could help with appetite. Kind of like people think that they'll be really starving, for example, when they're fasting, or if they're on a calorie-restricted ketogenic diet, that they would be really hungry. But because those different approaches can upregulate your metabolism and make you better at generating energy, oftentimes, appetite diminishes compared to the situation where you're ironically eating all the food all the time, yet you're always starving because you're not effectively using that energy, just storing it.
Seems like the theory would hold up, when studying that out for sure. Because of what you just mentioned. I mean, anytime you sort of get a boost in your metabolism, whether it's through some sort of like stimulant, coffee, some workout supplement, or something along those lines, usually appetite is suppressed. So that definitely could have been going on for sure. It would be interesting to prove out, and definitely one maybe that would be should be added to the list for sure.
Some more really quick questions. Do you know, does red light therapy burn calories on its own? I know a lot of people love the idea of passive weight loss.
I'd have to look at some of the data with respect to weight and fat loss, and whether that was like a diagnostic metric that was evaluated. But again, like based on theory, your cells are producing more energy, so they're also consuming more energy at the same time. They're becoming more efficient at what they do. So by consuming more energy and producing more energy as a byproduct, you would naturally think there would be some caloric burning that was going on. But I'm I'm without digging into the clinical data, I'm unaware of whether or not that was an actual metric that's been studied out.
And do you think red light therapy holds potential for longevity? Do you know, have there been any study? I mean, I can't imagine I don't even know what type of study that would be, but as far as how red light therapy and near infrared therapy can affect lifespan, I don't even know what that would look like.
Yeah, I mean, longevity is kind of a broad sort of a broad category, if you will. I mean, there's no doubt that there's a laundry list of different studies that have showcased, the ability of red and near infrared light to sort of reduce, act as an anti-ager, so to speak, across a wide variety of ages, not just for like vanity purposes, but also, through the prevention of other chronic diseases. So I guess it kind of depends on your definition of longevity. But a lot of sort of longevity related subjects that sort of filter up under that bucket are definitely impacted in a positive way by red and near infrared light.
Yeah, it sounds like definitely, especially what we were talking about with the sludge earlier, just keeping things clean, not creating all that oxidative stress, and just improving immunity and inflammation and everything. It seems pretty prime for improving all the longevity factors or the anti-aging factors. So specifics for users looking to purchase their own red light therapy device, what should they look for? Because I know with Joovv specifically, you can get on their website. You guys have a lot of different versions. So you have like your Joovv Go, which is red light or near infrared, and it's chargeable. It's like I said, when I didn't have my Joovv device for 2 weeks, I had my Go, and I would have to use it and then until it drained, and then I'd charge it, and then I would use it until it drained, and then it was just like a cycle. So I'm excited now that I have my Mini again, which plugs in, and that one you can sit on your desk. And I'm about to order a Solo, which I'm really excited about. But you also do have the larger full body units, and you can. The cool thing is you can buy them, and you can add on, so you can slowly build. I'm talking to you. You obviously know this, but for listeners, you can buy the devices and slowly build a larger system as you go. But where should somebody start? If they're new to this whole thing, they want to get a device. Should they start small? Should they where do you recommend that they start? What should they look for? And also, if we could also just answer some brief technicalities, like how long should they use it for when they get their device?
I would even say if you're new to this topic of using light to enhance overall health, the first step I would say is just try to get a little bit more natural sunlight. Even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes a day, all of us don't get enough of it. And what I mean by that is, I'm not talking about going to the beach once every couple weeks and getting fried. That's not what I'm talking about. But just getting being more cognizant of getting more natural light exposure is a healthy thing that's completely free. But if you have the type of lifestyle that doesn't afford that, whether it's kind of work related, or you live in a climate that just doesn't get enough natural light on a consistent basis, supplementing with a high quality red light therapy device is a great next step. And to your point, Melanie, that there are some key things to look for. I'll mention a few that probably stand out or that are more critical than others. One would be making sure the device delivers the right wavelengths of light. So making sure it does in fact deliver red and near infrared wavelengths, the wavelengths that have been proven time and time again throughout all of these clinical studies that we've been talking about. So that's probably step one. Another key component is evaluating the power output of a device. You want a device that delivers, clinical grade or medical grade power, because that equates to shorter treatment times. It's one of the key things that we designed our devices for, simply because most people just don't have the time to use a device for 30, 45 minutes, an hour a day. That's not sticky enough. Most people will give up over time. So we wanted to produce a device that you really only need to use it for about 10 minutes a day to receive a clinically relevant dose of energy. And the cool thing about our devices is that all of the power specs have been independently tested and verified by one of the most renowned photodiagnostic labs in the country. And so making sure the device delivers a a fair amount of power and has been tested and confirmed by a third party is pretty important. And then the other thing that I'd probably call out is the kind of the modular nature. So, there's a fair amount of light therapy devices that are sort of one and done, meaning that you can buy it once and, it's small and you can't really add to it over time. And really, quite honestly, the Joovv Go kind of fits into that category. It's a super cool device. It's completely wireless and rechargeable, delivers the same power as our larger devices, but it's not modular in nature. So, you're kind of limited to targeting just, relatively small areas on your body, where the rest of our devices are modular in nature. And when I say modular, it's kind of like Lego blocks. You can start with one device and then they connect together both physically and electronically. So you can build out that full body system over time. And because they connect together electronically, one device then controls the whole system, which is kind of a cool feature. So it's not one and done. You can start small and kind of go big over time if you want to. So that's kind of the unique nature of our devices. And we design them that way because like I said earlier, we believe fundamentally that full body light therapy is optimal. That's the best way to do it if you can. And so we design our devices to make that relatively, accessible for most people.
And I will say for listeners, one of the things that sold me was you guys do have a wonderful, a guarantee, a money back guarantee. So if listeners are not seeing the benefits from their device, they are not out a pretty penny. They are returnable, but I know when I got mine, I just became more and more obsessed, and now I just want all of them, like all the units.
Yeah, you're right. That's something that we were the first company to sort of offer that 60-day money back guarantee. And it's funny when I think about when we first launched our devices, we were a little bit afraid about that. Like, red light is kind of this is a new category, and are people just going to return their devices? We were made us a little bit nervous, but to this day, we still, it's a very, very small percentage of people that take advantage of that, which is kind of cool to see. And I think that really speaks to the fact that this stuff works. We don't see very many people, returning their product or their purchase within that first 60 days. So I think that's kind of cool, but it's there if needed. If you buy it and it just doesn't work for you or doesn't fit into your lifestyle, you can simply return it for a full refund. We feel pretty confident that you'll get some benefits if you use it consistently.
Like I said, definitely saw that. We do have a special offer for listeners. So if you go to joovv.com/MelanieAvalon and use the code MelanieAvalon at checkout, you will receive a free gift from Joovv. And if you use that link and forward your proof of purchase to podcast@MelanieAvalon.com, you will also get a gift from me. I will send you a signed copy of my book, What When Wine. Thank you so much for that offer. That's really wonderful. So make sure you use that link if you do want to get your own device, like I did. So obsessed. It's kind of crazy. I will just ask you personally. So you said that one of the benefits is that you can use it, that it's, so therapeutic that you can use it for a shorter session. Can you use it too much? Like I kind of always have mine on.
It probably depends on how you're using it. I would say, first and foremost, it's really hard to overdo it. And really when I say overdo it, I mean, there is probably more of a law of diminishing returns. Like after a certain amount of time, you're not probably reaping a whole lot of benefits, but like I said, it kind of depends on how you're using it. So if you're using it, using the device based on our sort of recommendations, and meaning that you're either sitting or standing from the device at a distance of about 3 to 6 inches for 10 minutes, you're going to receive a clinically relevant dose of energy. But if the device is 3 feet away, the actual amount of energy that's reaching your body is very low. So in that scenario, you could use it to illuminate a room at night just for healthier, so you're sort of using healthier wavelengths of light instead of bright blue light, and not disrupting your circadian rhythm at night. In that sense, no, you're not. There's no sort of dangers at all of overdoing it. But it kind of depends on how you're using it. But it's really, really hard to overdo it, and there's really no downstream negative ramifications. It's really just more of a law of diminishing returns.
Yeah, I will say, guys, when you have the device, if it's, one of the larger ones that you can really add light to a room, having it on in the evening is so wonderful. Like, it's so wonderful. It just illuminates the room with this like warm, comforting glow. Oh, it's the best way to just wind down your evening. I'm obsessed. I can't wait till I get the larger solo device and I can really integrate it into the light hacking of my apartment. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah, a lot of customers like when they first hear about that, they're like, "Oh, wait a second, I'm going to start doing that," because it's really it's pretty profound how using that type of light at night that sort of mimics the sunset. It definitely it's so much more calming, and there's already evidence that published evidence that showcases these wavelengths of light help your body shift from a sympathetic state to a more of a parasympathetic state, helping your body just to relax and prepare for bedtime. So just one of the many benefits of using these wavelengths of light on a consistent basis. Who doesn't want better sleep?
Oh, I know. And I really feel it instantly. Like, there's so many different practices that people can do to try to switch from sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system and really enter that rested mode. And I think a lot of times it requires, some winding down and some time. But for me, I'm always shocked. It's like, even if I come in and it's been a long day and I'm like hurried and frantic or whatever, I turn on the light and I change the lighting in the apartment with the Joovv, and I feel like this instant, it's like a click. And I don't know if that's just because now I've conditioned myself to do that, but it's amazing. Cannot recommend it enough. I do have one last question, not related. Well, it might be related. I guess we'll see. So I'm becoming more and more obsessed with how healing and wonderful for life gratitude is. So my question for you is, what are you most grateful for at this moment?
That's a really good point. Like I'm a big believer that focusing on what you're grateful for leads to a lot of ancillary benefits and helps to really reset kind of your framework. So that's cool to hear that you're into that as well. But I am most grateful probably for my family, my wife, who have been married to for almost 20 years now, and then we've got 4 really healthy kids. And I was gone. We were both gone actually for almost a week for the PaleoFX conference, and getting back home reminds me how much I am grateful for all of us that we're healthy. We're in the same home. It could be a lot worse. So I'm super grateful for that.
I love it. Makes me smile. Yeah, when I first decided to start this podcast, I was like, I need a question to always end with, and because there's so many questions that you could ask, but I was like, what question would like really just reframe things and end on a really positive note with a smile? So
yeah, and I say that I'm not trying to sound cliche, but like that's such a good practice. It's something that it seems like I go through periods where I'll practice it more consistently, but the times in my life where I don't want to say journaling. It's not necessarily journaling. It's just like taking time to pause and like I like the idea of writing that kind of stuff out. It's just it's so much better to serve as like a mental reset or refresh. And there's so many things that you are so easy to gloss over, but when you take some time to actually think about certain things in your life, it's just leads to so many other emotional benefits.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I recommend everybody integrate it into their lives, especially when I learned that you can't, at the exact same moment, you can't be in a state of gratitude and also be in a state of like fear at the same time.
Such a good point.
So you can really turn off negative emotions and fear and everything by just having that moment. So speaking of, I'm super grateful that you came on this podcast. Thank you for all that you're doing. Thank you for creating these devices. I am so grateful for my Joovv device. So I'm grateful for the work you're doing, the studies that you have upcoming. And I really appreciate the time that you took to talk with us today.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Melanie. It's always a pleasure chatting with you. I can tell that you go deep with your research. So that's really cool. That's really cool to see. So thanks again for having me on.
Thank you so much. And I'll talk to you next time.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for listening to the Melanie Avalon Biohacking Podcast. For more information, you can check out my book, What When Wine? Lose weight and feel great with paleo-style meals, intermittent fasting, and wine, as well as my blog, melanieavalon.com. Feel free to contact me at podcast@melanieavalon.com And always remember, you got this.